Hello, I am Ryan Turnage, and I graduated from Stockton in May of 2022 with a bachelor's in communication. And if anybody has ever taken Professor Shen, you probably know to only call it communication. We cannot call it communications. Otherwise, you will be a disappointment. I'm kidding, of course. But I hope you enjoy this video and get the most out of your experience at Stockton because it really did help prepare me for when I began going down a career path. But I'm going to try to start at the beginning because I think my little education journey is a little more unique than most. But anyway, I initially went to Ocean County College in Toms River, and I received my associates there before I attended Stockton. And while I was at Stockton, I was a member of the PRSSA, which is the Public Relations Student Society of America, where I was lucky enough to work with an excellent board of capable professionals and our advisor, Professor Soanes, who helped us learn and gain experience in a collaborative environment. I was on the dean's list all 4 semesters I attended and graduated summa cum laude. And after graduation, I landed a job at Atlanticare, initially as an office assistant, and now I am a talent acquisition partner in their HR department. I've been there almost 8 months, and it has been an experience to say the least, but in a really positive way. I've been challenged, and I have gotten to work with just some of the most capable people that I am just so lucky to share an office space with. But anyway, just as I said before, we're going to start at the beginning. So, for a little bit of backstory, I first went to college in 2012. I went to William Patterson up in Wayne, New Jersey, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And after I finished my first year, I took some time off. And actually, no, yeah, I think I took some time off. And I just kind of wanted to get into the workforce. I've been a cart attendant, a cashier, a stocker, pizza guy, and a delivery manager, and some other jobs between that. And I ended up going back to OCC after a couple years, and I worked towards my associates. And I must have switched my major 3 or 4 times before settling on communication. I thought at first I thought I'd just try to become a video editor or some kind of cameraman, a director, or something involved with production. And as you could probably see by the camera quality, it probably wouldn't have worked out. But I thought it was interesting. I like doing it, and I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna work toward that and see what happens. And then I ended up graduating a couple years later, and that's when I got my first degree. And I thought that was kind of like a staple in getting somewhere else in my professional life, and it was. It definitely helped lead me toward going to Stockton. But after that, I decided to take another year off because continuing education just was not financially feasible. I could not afford it. I started working at Staples in Toms River to support myself until eventually moving with my family further south. And that allowed me to be a lot closer to a university. And spoiler, it was Stockton. So I was able to continue working for Staples. And there's this guy that I used to work with named Parth. And at the time, he was a sophomore. And, we would kind of talk, and we had a lot in common and everything. He would talk about his experience at Stockton, and I was always interested in going back to school to try and get my bachelor's. I wanted to do it at some point, right? And as I was kind of aging, it was more like a sooner rather than later thing. Um, and I would just ask him questions, and then there was some point. I think I said I'm going to be stuck working jobs like this forever, and he just said, "Well, why don't you just fill out an application?" And I took his advice. Uh, Filled it out, and I don't remember when I got the acceptance, but I still have the letter because that was a big deal to me. It's in a filing cabinet in a little folder, but it meant everything to me. That was just, it meant a chance for me to get something better. And that's really all I've ever wanted, was just to have the opportunities that my parents couldn't get, uh, or other family members or my friends and everything. And I always thought education was a way to do that. I know there's like trade schools and everything, but I am more prone to those type of environments. I like to be in a classroom. I always have. And I remember when it first started, we were still in lockdown. Well, obviously. And went into it all with virtual classes. And there was definitely a disconnect at times, but I did develop good external communication skills with emails, Zoom, Teams, videos, and collaborating with groups completely over digital platforms. I was still able to join different clubs. Like, yeah, it was over video, but it was something. It was still pretty cool. And I personally think those experiences helped me become more adaptable coming out of it. And yeah, I think it ultimately kind of helped me a little, but it's really just a silver lining on an otherwise not great time. And when we did get to go back to in-person classes, I was able to put a lot of faces to the names of some of the professors who I didn't have a Zoom meeting with, and that helped me develop more professional relationships because now I could physically talk to them, and it was just nicer. And there's plenty of professors who have just influenced me throughout my time at OCC and Stockton. Of course, we're just going to focus on Stockton for now. And some of those professors were Lisa Youngblood, Suya Yin, James Shen, Bevan Song, and Toby Rosenthal. And there's definitely more who've helped me, but those are just people who come straight off the top of my head. And their classes were not the simplest. They were definitely challenging, and but challenging in like a very rewarding way. I was allowed to share my thoughts on current and past events, make arguments, judge ethics, mock manage PR firms, discuss theories, and work on group projects with some capable people. And I understand that to some people that's not going to sound exciting at all, but I love that. It's just fun to me, you know? And you weren't really treated like a kid, you know? So it was pretty cool to sort of deal with these rebuttals from people with actual life experience who have been in these professional environments who sort of give their take. And it was just really useful, you know? Like I think that was probably the most important thing that I could get out of my experience was how much people were able to give me like little life lessons. You know, what I should do after I graduate or what I should do while I'm working in an office job or just stuff like that. Like I learned so much from my professors, and that absolutely helped me land a job. I remembered every what's it called? Every interview tip that they gave me, what I should do to prepare for the interview, and I used all of it. I used the resources that they gave me. I contacted them after graduation to see if I could get some pointers on what I should do, and they always responded, always, and very grateful to them. But while I was at Stockton, the most common activity I did was write, and I must have written around 200 pages or more of double spaced 12-point Times New Roman font, and it helped develop a lot of habits and outlines for critical thinking. I'd also say it taught me how professors want assignments to be completed, which I was able to translate into my workplace. And then I would also intern as a staff member for WLFR, which now I'm no longer an intern, but I stayed there. I just kind of love the radio station, which you should tune in every Sunday from 12 to 2 on 91.7 WFR Promoted to hear my show. And yeah, definitely go and do that. And anyway, after graduating from Stockton, I probably filled out between, I'd say 8 to 12 applications per week for months, literally months. And it really started to stress me out. And I was very worried about landing a position at a place I wanted to work. I couldn't afford to move to a city, so I tried looking locally and ended up getting through some screening for a few places. And then I went through 2 rounds of interviews with a real estate firm, 3 interviews with Atlanticare. And the most important lesson I learned was to take the air. And what I mean is, really talk, demonstrate your skills, your attributes, your quirks, anything that can make you more valuable to an employer by grabbing from previous jobs, classes, or hobbies, but also just show that you're a normal person. At the end of the day, something that's severely underrated that people don't tell you is they got to see if you're a fit. Like if you are going to be able to kind of communicate with your coworkers, how you fit in with them. And if you can jive well with them, then that's a step in the right direction. And I will say, after working in recruitment, do not lie about what you can do. I didn't have to in order to get a great job, and you do not either. Just be honest and truthful with people. It's how you will get through these stages if you are starting from scratch after graduation, kind of like I did. And some of the platforms that I used to get there were Handshake, Glassdoor, and Indeed. Indeed was the site I saw the Atlanticare posting on. So these sites do work, but you need to be patient, and that can be extremely frustrating. But anyway, my first interview went well, and I was called back for a second, and I had to physically go to the building. And I remember I still talk about this sometimes to them, and now it's kind of funny because I'm on the other side. But anyway, it didn't start off well. I went to the wrong section of the building, but I did end up making it over there, and I got there on time, I want to say, because another pro tip, get there like 15 minutes early. That way you could just find your way there and make sure you're in the right building, because that saved me. But anyway, I finally get over there, and I'm led into this big conference room, or maybe not big. I was led to this conference room that had around, I think it was like 8 or 9 people around a large wooden table. And, they all went around and said their name, their position, what areas they were involved in, how long they've been with the company. And it was intimidating. But I went into it very prepped, and I had researched the company. I wrote down questions, I memorized them, and developed an outline based on my resume, my experiences before I walked into that. Also, wore a suit and tried to look as professional as I could. Like, I literally got a haircut, I think, less than a week before it. And I wore my glasses. I brought printouts of my resume, everything that I can think of, except for one thing that I really wish I brought. I should have just. You can write down your questions. I don't know why that didn't like occur to me, but write down your questions, put them into like a little folder, pull it out, and read from it. Nobody at all is going to look down on you for doing something like that. It's going to show that you're prepared. So seriously, consider that. It all works to kind of just enhance your image to people. And that's also a severely underrated thing to prepare for. So definitely do that stuff. And this interview probably lasted around 30 minutes. And as I said before, I just tried to take the air by relating experiences and past jobs to each other and how they helped me learn something. And I didn't lie about a single thing. Like everything that I told them was 100% the truth. But, some of the most common questions you might hear would be, why do you want to work here? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Tell me about a time you had to overcome a challenge, and how did you handle it? Oh, and then the fun. The fun question is, what do you do outside of work? And stuff like that. And honestly, another way that you could prepare would just be to go around to a few different websites that talk about preparing for interviews, and they will definitely help you get you started. Or email your professors, because they will also do the same thing. Half the stuff that I use to prepare myself for it, I put into that interview, and it worked. But after the second interview, it took around a week to move on to the third. And that was on Teams. It was with 2 of our managers. And that lasted around 30 minutes. And I remember thinking it wasn't as good as the first or the second. So I wasn't sure if I should be worried or not. But about a week later, they gave me a call and offered me the position. I accepted it. And that was like the first real step into a career. I won't dive too deep into my experience because this is already very long. But I'll try to tell you some things that worked for me. I'm a computer guy. I've built them, troubleshooted, just fiddled. And whenever some issues would kind of pop up that was technical and whatnot, I generally had a decent idea of how to approach it because to me they were pretty simple. And that's not to sound demeaning or anything like that. It's just I've been around them my entire life, so I've gone through these issues, you know? I've had to fix stuff on my own, and I guarantee you, like, it was not so simple in the beginning. Um, but those skills made me more useful, and I think it helped build my value in the department just a little bit more. Other times I just poke around some of the systems to learn more about it, and that helped develop familiarity. And when opportunities came by to give info about our systems to others, that also helped build some value and usefulness from me. When I was asked to take on more tasks, or if I asked to take on more tasks, it showed I wanted to be more involved. And it also just demonstrated that I wanted to be a team player, which I did. I absolutely did. And there's plenty of things that you can do to demonstrate yourself as a good coworker. But the main piece of advice to build yourself in your career is to just make yourself available. And you have to moderate it a little bit too. Otherwise, you can get burnt out or stretched kind of thin, and you won't be able to focus on what you were really hired to do because you're doing all these extracurriculars. So you have to know how to moderate, how to direct people to sort of figure these things out. It's like the saying, catch a man a fish, he eats for a night. Teach a man to fish, he eats for life. You know, like you got to sort of do stuff like that because then you could strike a good work balance. And that's probably the most important thing for you. And by being available, that brought me into contact with a lot of people, especially being in an HR department because you are constantly interacting with several people throughout the day. And most of them are from other parts of the organization or the community or people you might be onboarding if you are part of recruitment. But for anyone still in school, I'd recommend relying on your professors, especially the ones who give more difficult coursework. They are normally full of resources, advice, anecdotes, and they'll also be the ones to write really, really strong references for you if you've earned it. And like, yeah, they're kind of tough, but they're not lazy. You know, you ask them an honest question, they're going to give you an honest answer. So work with them. And there's plenty of stuff that is just purely luck, but I have failed a lot. So always compose yourself and try to approach every issue you come across with a clear and calm mind. It'll help you get further, and hopefully you have a long career in whatever you want to do. And I just want to give a quick little thank you to Professor Yin for the opportunity to talk about some of my experiences. I hope this video was able to help you. Good luck with your education. Get as much out of it as you can. Thank you.